Well, thank you. Well, welcome everybody to today's webinar. I hope you're having a great day. My name is Wendy Bourne and I am the General Manager for Member Engagement with Business Value Partners. And on behalf of my CEO, Robert Ford, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. We're partnering today with Inspire Me to run a series of webinars, the first of which is on what the most influential business leaders do differently. Firstly, though, I'd like to give a quick overview of Business Value Partners and how we came to be here today. So Business Value Partners is a membership-based organisation, and we're all about helping our members build value in their business through a supportive community, creating connections and productive collaboration. We're partnering with Inspire Me to run a series of webinars throughout the year. If you'd like to know more about Business Value Partners, you can find us at our website, businessvaluepartners.com.au, and I'll also put my contact details in the chat box at the conclusion of the webinar. A little bit of housekeeping. We will take questions. So if you want to pop them into the chat box throughout the presentation, we'll monitor those and try and answer as many as we possibly can. So it is my absolute pleasure today to welcome Robin Miles from Inspire Me, who I'll hand over to very shortly to present on today's topic. Inspire Me specialises in high-performance coaching and training solutions designed to empower individuals and teams to unlock their full potential, overcome challenges and achieve their goals. Their integrated approach, combined with coaching, training, facilitation and advice, help leaders to develop the skills, knowledge and, importantly, the mindset needed to succeed in today's complex and demanding world. Robin is the founding partner of Inspire Me and has extensive experience in these areas, gained from doing aid work in Africa, having served in the Reserve Army, being a project director on multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects and training internationally in the Harvard Negotiation Project Theory. So without further ado, over to you, Robin.
Perfect. Thanks, Wendy. And really nice to see you all and be with you today. I was just saying to Wendy that sometimes these webinars are, turn up and have a little bit of a chat, whereas this is going to be fast-paced, interactive, and a bit of a download in this subject. I sometimes feel like the content that I do is a little bit like the film The Matrix, when he sits in the chair and he gets uploaded, like it's going to be like that. But that's why we're recording it, so you can kind of go back and have a look. And we'll also share the slide deck so that you can take away some stuff. So it's all about, just value add. And this presentation and what I do, it is one of the fundamental building blocks of working with executive leaders and teams that we help them with, like, what are the practical things that I can do to actually just dial things up and get the impact that I actually want. And the first thing really is actually the same of anything that you want to improve. It's around actually focusing on being more intentional about it, which is about just first of all thinking about what makes for an inspirational leader for you individually, within your role, within your sector, within what you do. And then actually considering for yourself, like, well, why is that important? And if you understand what you want to do and why it's important, you're much more likely to kind of do it. And just before, I just forgot to mention, I've actually got Brad Clark with me as well from Inspire Me. So Brad's the member of BVP Partners. So if any of you are from BVP Partners, then you'll see Brad at the in-person sessions there in Melbourne as well. So once you've kind of worked out, like, what is it, how is it that I want to show up and why it's important, then we need to think about, right, what are some of the other reasons why it's important to do, and then how to do it, which I'll kind of go on to. And so just put your hand up if you've heard about this book, Good to Great. Put your hand up. Few people. Yeah, it's a great book. In actual fact, I see it every day because it's the book that sits underneath my monitor to lift it up by about that much. So that's why I look at it all the time. But it is a great book. And as you might well remember, the first key aspect of going from good to great is this concept of level 5 leadership. And it's one of the things that's kind of spoken about, but what does level 5 leadership absolutely, what does it actually mean? And this is what they speak about level 5 leadership in this kind of context. And when I look at this, a lot of it, I kind of feel like sometime, well, for me, I absolutely know that I'm down in the level 2, level 3, even level 1 in kind of what I'm doing. And I think we like to tell ourselves that we're level 5 leadership, but actually, are we doing it? And I find that one of the big things around dialing up the leadership scale, it's all about the impact that you actually have on people as a business leader, as executive, or whatever your title is within the organization that you are, if you're the business owner or not. And the thing with inspirational business leaders, that the one thing is that they lead with authenticity. And that's the thing from good to great. It's not that you're just doing it for the pay packet or anything else like that. You're generally doing it because you're aligned in your purpose. And most business owners that I know went into it for a very valid reason. And even if you're not a business owner and you're working in an organization, there's plenty of other places that you could work and earn money. So why is it that organization? And so what we've got to actually connect with sometimes is, what is our actual purpose in the work that we do and why we do it? And then once you actually connect with that, then the key attributes to have is the skills of presence and impact, so that you can have that impact to bring people along on that journey. So you've got to know what it is first for you, and then actually have the impact to achieve it. And there's lots of really good articles that I recommend you go and have a read of, and stuff like that. I'm going to go into some practical tools today, but there's some, a lot of really good articles around the executive or presence and impact is actually capabilities that are absolutely fundamental for business success. And so, with knowing that it's really important, like, what is it that we need to do? And this first bit for me is like one of the biggest well, the simplest things to understand and the most impactful. And I live now up in Byron Bay, and obviously walk along the beach and see the sand. So we always have an intention, but what is our impact? And so our impact is like the impact that we have in the sand. Every single footstep, we're actually having an impact. We're having an impact about what we do. We're having an impact with what we don't do. But the key thing is it the right impact? Like my mum always used to say to me, like, I always go everywhere twice, the second time to apologize, because that's the kind of character my mum still is today. But that's what we need to kind of understand for ourselves. Is it actually the right impact that we're having? Now, not only do you have an impact, but as you go along on your journey within business, in your role or whatever you do, when you look back, you actually leave an impression. And that impression vastly dictates your ability to get things done with and through other people, and your ability to influence. The number one, is when he says, both Brad and I trained for the Harvard Negotiation Project Theory. And the latest research shows that the number one influencing tactic that beats all others, all of them, is connection. If we have a genuine connection and an impression with an individual, we're far more likely to be able to influence them and get a good outcome. And so having that, because somebody's, oh, I don't really care, I'm just moving forwards. But I'm like, yeah, you're moving forwards, but you actually are leaving this impression, and we can't leave that to chance. So like I said, that impression greatly influences what you're able to achieve, and you need to actively manage those perceptions, because you can't leave it up to chance. Because if you leave it up to chance, that's going to really dictate the results that you get as a consequence kind of from it. Now, a lot of people actually think that you either have it or you don't have it. And that's not actually true. These things can actually be learned. And as Wendy said as well, is that I was in the Reserve Army for 4 years, training officers to go in the regular army. And in England, I'm sure it's maybe the same here in Australia or in New Zealand, where the military colleges, they call them the factories, because whoever you are going in, you all turn out the same. So lots of these leadership attributes can actually be learned, and we don't obviously have to put you through a factory, but we can give you some frameworks and tools and things that you can do to actively apply to lift that level of influence and impact that you have. Now, oh, sorry. So with that in mind then, and to help you identify the characteristics of leaders with impact and presence, let's just see you in the chat. Can everyone just jump in the chat and identify what do you think is a characteristic of a leader that's got impact and presence? Like, you know, what stands out to you? If I said, what are the characteristics of leaders with impact and presence? What words kind of come to mind? Just jump in the chat and put a couple of things. There's no right or wrong. Just put a couple of words of descriptions that come to mind of someone who's got impact and presence. Strong, engaging, inspirational, trust. Yep. Nice. And maybe some of the other people are driving, so I don't really want them to jump into the chat function. Ability to listen and let the team resolve the problem, approachable, visionary. Yeah, nice. So the thing is, creates a culture of psychological safety. Nice. See, the thing is that we know it. Do you know what I mean? It's like most things with humanity. We know what the answer is. We just don't do it. Do you know what I mean? So when you look at the models, so I can't remember where the source of this one was, but these were, you know, the top leadership characteristics that were defined from a particular model. I think I just lost the reference point of where they came from. But you can see some of the bullet points that you put in the chat that are very similar to this. And there is another one, I think the next slide. The other one is the Bates's model of characteristics of leaders that describes what level 5 leadership is. So we know, and they're very similar to the things that you put in the chat. So we know them. The key thing to understand then is like, okay, how can I demonstrate observable behaviors that actually exemplifies that thing that I know is important? So what's the observable behavior? So how am I actually going to execute on that? That's the next level of thinking that needs to be done. And as you're listening to the rest of it, I'd like you to be thinking, what's one thing that I can do to dial things up? And it doesn't have to be a massive thing. It can be a relatively simple thing to dial up any one of these characteristics. So let's get into it and actually get super practical about things. So the first easy thing to do when we're thinking about executive presence and impact, or as business leaders, what the presence and impact that we have, we need to be thinking about our visual, vocal, and verbal. And through the slides that I've got, you'll see that I reference these different points. Obviously, if you're going to be communicating with customers or stakeholders and you want to have a presence, like be on camera and be really focused and really present. You know, that's the number one. I think some of the bullet points that you put there in the chat, for instance, if I was talking to you and just constantly distracted with, you know, email reminders or whatever, what impression is that leaving you? It's leaving you that impression that you're not that important. Even if my phone goes off and I go, oh, sorry about that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm actually here and I'm kind of present with visually, you can see that I'm here and I'm committed to, you know, everyone on this call right now. So I actually think that in the visual, vocal, and verbal kind of category, there's some real basic things that we always used to do that, because of COVID and a whole range of other things, like really ridiculous bad habits have kind of crept in. Does that make sense? And I think if we just take ownership of them, we can dial them back up. And I know maybe I'm getting older, but I think we should just go back and be a bit old school about some of these things. Like I say to people on webinars, you would never go to a meeting and then turn your back and face the wall. You would just not do that. And even when lunch comes out, you wouldn't go, okay, I need to go and find a private cubicle or turn my back and eat my sandwich. Does that make sense? I'll be more than happy of any one of you actually eating while we're on this call. Does that make sense? So, and think about your vocal and verbal. Think about the words that you use, you know, and yeah, the words that you use, the tone that you use, the passion you use, the tone that you use, all these kind of things can really impact. And I'm not telling you anything that I haven't done in the past. Visually, for instance, you know, when I was in the military, they told me to point like that, which I did. But then when I started facilitating, when you do that to people, it's not that good. And they went, yeah, Robin, just change your hand to that. So when you ask a question, say, hey, James, have you got a question? Wendy, have you got a question? That to that is very different. Does it make sense? It leaves a very different impression on you. Also, I've got a really monotone voice. And so, and I can't change that, but what I can change is my speed, my excitement, the slowness, and some of those other parameters. And then I had to practice kind of with some of those things so that hopefully my voice has got a little bit more impact than like that. That my wife still complains to me about, but anyway, that's another subject. So this is the key. This is one of the key things out of today, and then I'm going to give you some other practical things. So, Harvard Business School did some research because we all know that we judge people within seconds of meeting them. That's what we do, right? But what they did is that they actually identified what are the factors that people consider when we're evaluating people within those first 2 seconds. And what they noticed was that 2 factors take up 80% of what your impact is on another person. 80%, that's huge. So if we know what those 2 factors are, then we can be conscious of dialing them up or down. The other 20% is like childhood, upbringing, culture, whole range of things that you're just never going to really know because it's unique to the individual, you know. But 80% is to these factors of warmth and strength. Now, I'm going to go into a bit more detail around that warmth and strength kind of side of things, but just remembering that 80% of it is to these 2 factors. So you got strength, you got warmth, and then what we kind of put is where these 2 collide, that is your leadership impact and presence that you have on the individual, that balance between the 2. And it's very much an adaptive style that you can dial up or down, depending on who you are, depending on the context that you're operating in, etc. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But if, for instance, on this warmth and strength, if we have a lot of strength but no warmth, then we either drive envy or fear in people. If we just have warmth, we're a really nice guy, you know, like Brad, he's a really nice guy, but man, he couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, Brad, for picking on you. I thought it'd be better to pick on
It's
you
a
than
very
anyone
strong
else.
paper bag.
Yeah, it's a very strong paper bag, but it's a paper bag nonetheless. So, you know, are we so warm where, you know, like people have pity on us because we can't fight our own battles anymore? You know, and when someone doesn't have strength or warmth, we're like, who is that person? We almost just have contempt for them. Obviously, where we want to be is up in that admiration quadrant where we've both got strength and we've got warmth. And so to go into a little bit more around what strength and warmth actually is, I'll give you some words to describe it. But warmth is basically how welcoming, you know, you talk about psychological safety, being a good listener, being present with people. That's all the warmth. I think all of us have probably got a family member somewhere, like an uncle or an auntie or a grandma or a grandfather or whatever, that was just one of those warmest, kind of nicest, inclusive kind of people. So how do we project that? But then on the other side of things, what's the strength? Because if you don't sound and look like you're confident, they will think that you're not sure. So the strength is about knowing your shit. Does that make sense? I know my stuff and I've got a technical, you know, and equally, it's about being confident with what you don't know. So it's not about overconfidence. It's about being really confident with what you know and what you don't know. Now, I've kind of changed my view of this slide, and I've been presenting this for a number of years. But what I really think about this is that this is a slide that I would really recommend that you almost have as a little template. And you could set it up as a, you know, an electronic one, because this is a real adaptive leadership kind of style. So we know that the characteristics of warmth, you've got some words there. On strength, you've got the other side. But for any meeting, you can literally go, right, for this meeting or for this presentation or this engagement, whatever it is that you're doing, what's the ingredients that I want to have? Do you know what I mean? I want to be confident, but I really want to be helpful and caring in this situation. And I also want I want intelligence, and I want a bit more empathy as well. So it's kind of like a little bit of a mix and match, because equally, any of us can dial up more warmth or more strength. And in any situation, but someone says, but what's the perfect? And I'm like, the perfect is about adapting your style to what's needed at the time. So for instance, if you were reporting to the board of an organization, your organization, another, do you think you need more warmth or strength? Just jump in the chat and put the answer off, come off mute. So if you're going to a board, would you need more warmth or more strength? Yeah, more strength. Yeah, perfect. James, I think you spoke, but the audio didn't come through, but I lip read as well.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. That's working. Yeah, strength. Yeah, you need both, Peter. But yeah, it depends what your board is as well. But generally, your board are there. They only meet for a certain period of time. They want the key messages. They want to know where things are at, and that's it. And then if you think about, okay, like, I don't know, when I was in Victoria post Black Saturday bushfires and then bringing the team together, in that kind of situation, obviously massive warmth needed. You know what I mean? Now's not the time for deadlines and those kind of things, but you still need a bit of strength in that to say, hey guys, I'm here and I'm absolutely going to be supporting you. So you do need that little bit of strength, but much more that kind of warmth. And also you might actually, and I get it all the time, people kind of call me and and I call them and they say, hey, okay, what do you want? I'm like, okay, your strength. you you just want an answer right now. Or I might call them up and they say, hey, Robin, lovely to chat to you. How are you doing? How's the family? Okay, it's more warmth. Do you know what I mean? So it gives you this ability to kind of flex your style to kind of suit. So I'm just going to pause there quickly, because that balance of those two, like I say, 80%. I'm going to give you some other kind of tools and tactics and ideas and hacks and things, but 80% is due to this. So any questions from anyone on this at all? And just feel free to come off mute. I'll put it in the chat. No?
Robin, I just like the idea of being confident on what you do know and what you don't know. So the inference there is don't overreach on your knowledge or skill base, and be clear. If you get asked, it's actually okay. It's actually a sign of strength to say, I don't know that.
Yeah.
Or something to that effect.
Yeah, 100%. I remember being on the ABC radio station doing a talkback segment, and the community were asking me questions about stuff. And someone came on and asked me a question. He was a real adversarial guy. I always wanted to hang you on something. Do you know what I mean? And he came on and asked me a question. And I actually went, you know what? That's a really good question. And 100% I should know the answer, but I don't. Is it okay if I get back to you at the end of the day and I'll give you the answer and I'll give you a call personally? The guy went, oh yeah, absolutely. That's fine. And I even admitted that I should know the answer, but I didn't. And because I came from that sense of humility, he didn't try to hang me on live radio. Do you know what I mean? He was just like, cool, you've admitted that you should know and you don't, and that's okay. And then I said, have you got another question? And then you get to ask two questions. And he asked another question, which I could answer. So yeah, being confident with what you know and confident what you don't know, I think is, it's a really good tip. And so let's get into some other stuff then. As we said about trust, trust is built in that balance of warmth and strength and the blend that you kind of put between the two. I'd always recommend with people starting with warmth and then dialing up your strength. I would generally go that way because it's a safer kind of place. Because if you go with warmth with someone, like you meet someone, like, if I meet Peter for the first time, I say, hey, Peter, nice to meet you. How you doing? And I go with warmth and Peter goes, yeah, I'm fine, but I really want to get down to business. I'm like, cool, let's do that, And so it just gives that opportunity. And I've got to admit for myself that I can really nail certain situations where I've misread it. Do you know what I mean? Where a person really sent that they were into the warmth. And then the person's just gone, to be honest, I'm getting a bit frustrated with this. And I'm like, oh, what? And they were like, when are we going to get into business? I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that that's what you wanted to do, So, Yeah, I can really see how I misread it in certain times. I think it'll always happen. But trust as well is about your visual, vocal, and verbal. You know, we're looking for humans like congruity. They want like, okay, are you dressed appropriately for the environment that you're in? You know, do you use the same language as us? You know, when I first came to Australia, the CEO said to me, he said, Robin, the first thing that you really need to do to build trust, he said, you've got to understand our language and understand all our acronyms. And I said, well, have you got a list? And he said, yeah. He said, you can have my list. There you go, start learning them. So trust is built up with that congruity around that. And when we're slightly out of whack or out of sync, that's where trust can be broken. So making sure that you're kind of going, what's the message that I really want to send? What's the characteristics I want to show? Knowing the warmth and the strength, making sure your vocal, visual, and verbal are all aligned with that as well. So here's some other like little top tips with you about speaking persuasively. The first thing is about being concise and precise, speak with conviction and absolute certainty about things. But like I say with this one is you've got to be a little bit careful as well that you don't go too extreme. You know, you're not too absolute, as it shows there, you know, arrogant, for instance, that, you know, you absolutely believe it kind of, and your level of conviction is really strong and you can kind of come across as arrogant. But it is a matter of being concise and precise. For instance, Winston Churchill said, if you want me to speak for a day, give me 10 minutes to prepare. If you want me to speak for 10 minutes, give me a day to prepare. And you get that analogy, which is like, okay, to keep it concise, you have to put a lot of energy and effort into the preparation. Now, I've done a little YouTube video on this about the top tip for, and I think it was about negotiation or influence, to be honest, but it's the same in this space as well, is there's one tip for introverts and extroverts that are exactly the same, just for different reasons. So if you want to have an increased level of presence and impact, preparation is key. For introverts, because you tend to go into meetings and then walk away going, oh, I should have said that, I should have said that. And if you don't say something, you don't get the credit for it. Yeah. So that's the trick. The tip for introverts is to make sure that you actually have your key messages kind of written down so that you do deploy them in the meeting. Extroverts, they haven't got a problem with rocking up to meetings. But the problem is, James is laughing. So, but the problem with extroverts is we go, no, 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 no. And then as we finish talking, we realize what the key point is. But by that time, the person's kind of switched off. So what we need to do is take responsibility for our extroverted energy, talk it through to get to what the point is, and then be able to deploy that a little bit more kind of concisely. The other thing is about having a convincing rationale, having the facts speak for themselves, pointing to the evidence and those things. Because what this does is it shows your strength without being arrogant about it, you know, because there's lots of people who like to talk about stuff, and then when they get challenged, then they kind of crumble. So, and also for your own internal confidence, if you know the convincing rationale. So I just helped someone this morning who is asking for a massive, they're going for a job, and it's a massive pay increase. So they don't want to tell them what they're currently on, because they go, oh yeah, we'll have you at that rate. Thank you very much. But I said to him, I said, you've got to have a convincing rationale. What is your rationale? And then when he started talking me through, I'm like, okay, your convincing rationale is when they ask you how much for, you know, do you want for the job, you can give them a range. And the convincing rationale is I'm currently being approached for other opportunities that are in the range X to Z. Does that make sense? So it's not what he's on now, but, and it's true, you know, he is getting, and it's just a matter, and then as soon as he had that, it was like, oh my God, I feel so much better for now having the conversation with them about the pay. So always making sure that you've got that convincing rationale to, one, convince yourself to get that clarity, and then you'll be able to communicate that to others as well. Just check. Yeah, that's all right. I'll come to that one. The other one, which sounds strange, but have contrary opinion. So this is about you having the strength and warmth and, you know, having the positive impact. But in actual fact, again, because what this actually shows warmth and strength. It shows warmth that you're open to listening to the other person and understanding kind of from them, and that you've got the warmth of humility of understanding that there isn't just one way to kind of do things. So there's that. But it actually shows real strength to actually say, hey, I might be wrong with this. It shows real strength to be able to say that. Real technical experts are kind of open to it, you know. And to give you an example, I remember, what's his face? Sir David Attenborough being on the Graham Norton show, I think it was. And one of the other guests said, I've heard a fact about a bird, you know, or whatever it was. And so David Attenborough, you could see that he kind of thought, I don't think that's quite right. But he embraced it and he asked questions. He said, well, what was it? Where did you see it? And then he asked questions and he said, well, what I do know is that this is the case. And then the other person went, oh, I think that's it. That's it. That's it. It wasn't that. It was that. But it actually showed his strength to be open to that contrary opinion on things. Does that make sense? It's kind of almost like fake confidence, which is, I am right on this and you are wrong. It shows real strength because it shows strengths that you can be nimble on your feet, to be open to multiple ideas and open to even better ideas than what are on the table. Yeah. And so I'll just pause there because sometimes that brings up a little bit of controversy for people as well. Any questions on that one for anyone? No. Okay.
Robin, sorry,
Yes.
Robin, I have
Go
a
ahead.
question. So does
Yeah.
this come back to the seek first to understand kind of thinking before
Yeah,
you kind of jump in with your argument?
Yeah, correct. It does, but not exactly, because here you can put your opinion out there. Say, hey, look, I think this is the right way to do, but look, there might be a different view or opinion. So you put your opinion out there, but then just ask for if there's any other kind of views on things. Does that make sense? Because you're not limiting the value to your own capacity, if that makes sense, you know. Yeah, I mean, when I trained with the founder of the Harvard Negotiation Project, right? This guy was the negotiator between Mandela and de Klerk for the new constitution of South Africa. He invented the Truth and Reconciliation process for the Camp David Middle Eastern Peace Treaty. And I'm training with him in negotiation. At the end of the session, he said, right, we need to debrief. And I was like, right, okay, he's going to tell me everything that I did wrong. His first question to me was this: hey, Robin, so where did I stuff up today? I'm like, what? Like, you're like the god of negotiation. And then I just realized the reason why he is so good is because he does that. He's looking for a contrary opinion, because he said, you will see things fundamentally different to me, and that's of value to me. And so again, it's just about being open to that contrary opinion. Yeah, yeah. So I think it's a number of things all wrapped up in one, to be honest. So a couple of other things. One is about reduce and simplify. Keep your points strong. Use the rule of three. And for instance, when I was working in Victoria with the government there, I remember Tim Pallis. In actual fact, I think he's still the treasurer down there in Victoria. And I gave him a proposal for things, and we done a lot of work with it. And my guys had kind of done so much overwhelming rationale why this was the right way to go. And they gave him 10 points of rationale why this was the right way to go. And I remember him saying to me, he said, Robin, if you would have stopped at number 5, you would have been fine. He said, but I can't agree with a proposal where there's that point down at the bottom. Does that make sense? And when I went back to my guys and said the minister's actually said no, and we will, you know, because he's now said no, that's it, we can't move forwards with this. And I said to them about the extra points they did. They said, oh no, they weren't showstoppers at all. We didn't have to put that in. And in actual fact, his interpretation isn't quite right. And so it just showed me that it's not a matter of conceding information that's important. It's just like keeping it. Most of the times we make decisions on, is there one non-negotiable reason why we need to do this? Does that make sense? There's normally one non-negotiable for us, and then there can be 2 supplementary good reasons. So I would be really Like, have 3 points of rationale. Why going the way in which you're proposing you think is a good way? If you want 3 points of rationale with regards to the downsides of going an opposite way, keep it kind of simple within your key points. And again, preparation is really key for that as well. Just put your hand up if you've seen this before. It's the knowledge value chain. Lots of people have seen it before. Put your hand up if you've seen this before. Or sometimes, yeah, a couple of people. A few people. So when I'm working with engineers and people, this is the key thing. Just realizing where are we at on this. And again, like for me, in what I do, having this as a visual aid for myself on a daily basis is a good thing, because we all get sucked in and drawn in. And I even had it this morning just before I jumped on kind of calls with people, because I kind of reflected on a project that we're working on, and we're doing all the right things, what they're asking. And I'm like, nah, there's something missing, and I need to communicate at a higher level that yes, we're doing all these things, but I've got this intelligence around what's happening that I don't think's quite right. And I think you guys need to make a different decision on things. But, you know, like just to elevate yourself, because I think sometimes we can get so focused on the machinery of what we need to do on a daily basis. We're not really realizing that what people really buy from us is our knowledge and our intelligence to enable them to make the right decision and action to create the value. Does that make sense? And so granted that we need to do these other pieces, and I think for some people as well, it's about understanding the personality preferences, because, you know, if you're dealing with a CFO of another business, for instance, they're going to be highly data driven. So also dipping down into the detail when it's actually needed for the individual as well. Yeah. And then the last thing, I think pretty much, yeah, it's kind of bringing it to a bit of a conclusion. We talk about selling the benefits of things rather than the features, and I've got to admit, I always used to get a little bit confused, like what's a feature and what's a benefit. And so you got the example there about the features. It's an unbreakable design, it's waterproof material. Benefits about what it actually does for the person. And I think if you can just do a bit of a flip in what's the genuine benefit, you know. So for instance, even saying, okay, if people do this, they're going to save X amount of time. That is a benefit, but like to communicate what they could use with that time. So do this and you'll be able to spend 30 minutes every week with your family more than what you currently do is a benefit, you know. But granted, for some families, maybe 30 minutes extra with the family might be a negative for them. So you've got to be a bit careful with that, depending on the family dynamics. So the way to turn a feature into a benefit is a feature is a factual statement or a specification of what it is. Yeah. How you change it is that you say, well, what does the person kind of get from that? And you ask the question, what does that mean for you? So there's a little bit of a joke there that, you know, the apple's got low calories and it's healthy. That's great. But what does it actually mean? You know, look better than the donkey from accounting at the end of year party because you're looking slim and trim. Or it could be, you know, be active with your children when you're retired, for instance. That's the kind of the benefit. And this is the sentence to kind of put, and lots of people have kind of grabbed this when we're working with teams and organizations to get them to win like big projects or whatever, is that whenever they say anything that they think is really impactful, they finish it with, and what that means for you is ... Because they think what they've said is really impactful, but normally it's actually about features or it's about themselves versus about the other person. So just putting that sentence into deploying it when you're sending message to people to go, and what that means for you is, and what that means for you is. Or if you challenge your team or your people, which is like, okay, but what does that mean for our customers? What does that mean for our customers? It'll get them to really start to think about that. And if you communicate in a way which is about the benefits to your customers, your clients, your stakeholders, it's going to be much more impactful than if you just tell them about the features. And I think the key example they spoke about was you know, the difference between BlackBerry and Apple in the old days. You know, BlackBerry were all around, okay, the functionality, and then the iPhone was all about, you know, the benefits that it kind of gave, and people, you know, gravitated. I think BlackBerry are dead now, aren't they? Or if not, they're very, very near. So, Peter, I thought you were talking then, but I couldn't hear your audio.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. Were you talking to us then? I just saw your lips reading, but I couldn't hear anything.
I was just nodding and agreeing with what you were saying, and I think I was going to save a question for the end, so I don't know how far off you are,
Yeah,
but I
ask
could
it now.
ask. What are your thoughts on purpose-driven leadership? And by that I'm meaning specifically having, you know, a purpose that the company has that maybe brings everybody together. What are you seeing a lot of that? Because there was I think a period of time recently where everyone was talking about, oh, you know, we've got to talk about our why and get everybody in. I still think that purpose-driven leadership is really important, meaning that, you know, if we all work in an insurance company, what are we doing every day to try and make the insurance category better?
Yeah.
You know, is that relevant, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that what happened was that when COVID and all, you know, GFC stuff and COVID, everyone went back to, we just need to do whatever we need to do to survive, you know, like a lot of business went into that kind of category of things. What I've personally seen and what we've seen Inspire Me is this year is a massive reopening of everything. And I think that what happened is over COVID, it put a handbrake on everything. Then people came back over COVID, and you know the phases of team development, which is the forming stage where everyone's being nice, and then you go through the storming. I think that this year everyone's kind of gone into the storming from a conflict kind of misalignment perspective, or people going, why are we actually here now? Do you know what I mean? And also people have actually got a new relationship with work in having COVID and downtime. They're actually much more conscious of, if I'm going to work, it's got to be something that's worthwhile leaving the home for now, you know. And God's honest truth, we have been absolutely flat out this year. Like, it's been so busy getting teams together, getting organizations together to have the conversation about, right, let's actually reconnect with what our purpose is, get on the same page so that we can kind of execute. And yeah, the number of air miles that I've picked up this year is amazing, to be honest. So I think that, yes, it is, but I think it's now back on the agenda for lots of people because they're seeing it as absolutely necessary. And what we've started to see in some sectors is that some organizations are just paying people more money to get them over. And so that we're losing good people. And I think that's a very short-term strategy. And if you can actually focus on what the purpose is and bringing people together, I think absolutely I'd be saying that that's the focus, or otherwise your staffing costs are just going to kind of go up. People will just be leaved and then just not be connected. Does that make sense, Peter?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think there's no doubt that this next generation of people joining your team needs to feel like there's a really good reason why we're here.
Yeah, and I think it's about reconnecting with the purpose, not inventing the purpose. It's there. It's actually about just realizing it. Like I say to engineers, like I connect with the 1840s definition of civil engineering, which is harnessing the forces of nature for the benefit of mankind. That's what we do. You know, we, like, if I'm doing work in the water sector, you know, when was the last time that you went to turn on the tap and there wasn't water? You know, electricity, you have blackouts every now and then or whatever, but water is like one of those 100%. That's what we enable. Do you know what I mean? And realizing that, you know, you know, whatever sector that you're in, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. So yeah, just the final few things, and we'll ask for questions. Understanding the other person's decision-making criteria is really, really important, and actually focusing your attention on those things, not your decision-making criteria, their decision-making criteria, is another effective strategy. Also trying to paint a picture in the other person's brain, because it actually ignites other parts of the brain which are more kind of influential. So if you can actually paint a picture of what it looks like using a metaphor, for instance, using images to convey your message, can actually really, really help get that cut through with people as well, and leave them with a good impression. And then the final thing is about using towards and away language. So away language is don't do that, or otherwise bad things will happen. Towards language is do this and good things will happen, or carrot and stick, you know, that kind of analogy. What we kind of say with this is to be balanced with both the pain and the gain. Because it is important. And again, I just had a conversation with someone this morning. I'm like, guys, we really need to lift our game and see this as a must-win project, because the negative consequences, if we don't bear thinking about. Does that make sense? So it's about giving them the towards language about this is all the behaviors we want. But I think we do need reference to the pain. But like it says there, that to be balanced with the 40-40 and the 20 somewhere kind of in between. The reason being is that there's some really interesting research which comes to the fact that, you know, human beings have got more negative emotions than positive ones. And that's because we want to be kept alive rather than thrive. That's the God's honest truth. Yeah. And so we actually run away 3 times faster away from pain than we do towards joy. And so like that's an important psychology. But then equally, if you were kind of just away language, it's not very motivational. And the conversation, Peter, you and I had don't really fit into that as well. So I think it is important to reference, because some people don't want to reference the pain kind of side of it, but I think it's actually important to make sure that you're balanced with that as well. What that looks like in pictures is that if you came to my optimized productivity training, I would say, hey, we want less of that, but we want more of that. And so it just paints that picture kind of visually in the, you know, towards and away language. And picking up on Peter's point as well, is that we absolutely need to focus on both the logical thinking side and the heart and the emotional side, again, which kind of comes from the strength and the warmth, balancing it up. It's a matter of winning their hearts and their minds. So some summary kind of key points there. Probably the top one, to be honest, is around that warmth and strength, 80% in warmth and strength. And then there's little kind of tips that you can kind of take away as a consequence kind of for that. But I wanted to make sure that we had a little bit of time for questions. So yeah, over to everyone for, any questions that you have on anything at all.
I have a question. You mentioned understanding someone's decision-making processes or methods. Do you have a methodology that you use to extract that if they don't actually understand how they want to make the decisions?
Yeah, good question. So the first thing is that I'm really upfront and I just ask things directly. So I literally just say, hey, like in this, like in regards to this subject, what's your decision-making process? What's helpful for, how can I be of help within that for you? So is it about having data? Is it about knowing the benefits? Like what's actually kind of helpful to you? So I just ask the question directly. If the person doesn't know, and I think that this is another key skill that for business leaders we need to develop, is actually our coaching ability. Our ability to ask questions of our clients and our customers so that they can understand things that are not in the forefront of their brain. So it's really about the decision. It's really about the questions that you ask. So you can actually say, hey, look, well, you know, is this in your authority to make the decision, or do you need to get someone else to approve it? Oh, it's someone else. Okay, well, you know, how do you get that approval, for instance, just functionally? Oh, you get it like this. Okay, what's the types of things that they like or they don't like, or what's their preference? You know, you just ask them the questions.
Yeah.
Around it. Yeah, that's.
Thank you.
That's
I was just more, I'm a very direct person as well. So I was just thinking, well, I probably shouldn't start with the way I would work, but if you're
correct,
direct is fine.
Yeah, correct. Direct is fine. And it's not about you. It's be direct with the questions that you ask. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And always, if you know that you're direct, then always start to say, oh, look, if you can help me
Yeah.
to understand. Because help
Okay.
isn't an emotional kind of term that's like, oh yeah, I can help you. You know what I mean? And then you can be direct with the question because you put the word help at the front.
Thank you.
No worries.
I think people reading can be really helpful for those who are somewhat less direct. So I'm a significantly less direct than Robin is. I tend to look for patterns of behavior and people read to get a sense of what's reasonably going to get traction. So are they really high level? Are they really direct? Are they a little bit more indirect, a little bit softer, and then sort of adapting your approach that way?
Thanks, Brad. Other questions from people? I'm happy if it's kind of off topic as well. I'll just share. We're going to put some links in the chat to some of the resources. There's a number of resources that we've got. So Julie, I think, is going to put the links in the chat for people, and some of the free resources of tips and those types of things if you're interested. So I'll stop sharing now. Yeah, Julie, if you want to put them in the chat for people so they've got them. But yeah, any other questions? Because the only other thing any other questions first of all? None for yourself.
A bit of a common theme, Robin, is imposter syndrome. I reckon that's come up for me half a dozen times in the last week. Any quick tips for anyone that's a bit insecure in the seat that they're sitting in, particularly at that leadership level?
Yeah, a great technique that I did years ago was that I got a flip chart and I drew a line because this was a group of people who were like, oh, they're all concerned because they all felt imposters and, you know, we're not seen by the organization and they weren't stepping up or being assertive and stuff. And so I went in and I had it was just a flip chart, a very big flip chart. And I drew a line down the middle, straight down. And I said, right, let's get all the contributing factors to why we're not confident. Let's just brainstorm them all. And so they thought I was going to fill both sides up. And so I filled up one side, you know, with all the reasons why they were feeling a lack of confidence in this organization, in this situation of doing what they, you know, were being requested to do, but not kind of stepping up. And they listed it all. And I went, that's awesome. How do people find their way? Yeah, it's that's the problem. And I'm like, great. So for everyone now on the other side, we're going to look at what action can we take to actually improve that situation. So this kind of comes to, if people know the 7 habits of highly effective people, what is it that's in my control? What can I control? And so out of it, I just acknowledge that, yeah, like you might well get up in front of people and speak and it's lousy. That's a reality. So what can we do to prevent that from actually occurring? And then they came up with all these actions on the right-hand side. And I said, how do you feel now? They were like, oh, much better. And we hadn't actually even implemented any of those actions, but it was that simple. Do you know what I mean? And one of the other tips is that 80% of our thoughts are regurgitated old ones. So all that's happening is you're going, yeah, I'm an imposter, 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 80% kind of going around. You're not actually fueling. So whenever that's happening, that's I call a negative form of thinking, which is to get out of your head and onto paper, complete the thought to get to the end. And to move it to like, well, what can I do? And to be honest, that would be my top tip. But do you have another one, Brad, that you've given to people?
Oh, look, it's almost like we set it up, which we absolutely didn't. But what I was going to say is the stuff that you've talked about today will help you to overcome imposter syndrome. It's actually taking responsibility for some of these techniques like warmth and strength.
Yeah.
That's something that we can all do, right? We can be warm. We can show strength, but some of it comes from planning, right? Yeah. And that's the irony of a lot of the stuff we do.
Yeah.
You can present this and they'll say, yeah, but how do I overcome imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
Here's a hint. Just do what we said.
That's it. And you will get the results. You will get the results.
Right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Brad. Cool. All right, Wendy, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robin. That was absolutely amazing and very insightful, and I'm sure a very, very helpful topic for everybody who attended today. So I will be sending out an email later today, which has a link to the recording and also lots of helpful goodies from Robin and his team, as well as a copy of the slides as well. So keep an eye out for that. If you would like any other information around either Inspire Me or Business Value Partners, I've put my contact details in the chat box. And you also have my email as well from the initial invitation and link to the webinar. So thank you again, Robin. Thank you everybody for attending. It was really great. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you very much.
Well,
Bye now.
thank you.
Thank you.